Wait a minute, now that I'm looking at the data, the CPUs, the GPUs, they all kind of perform the same. So are our marketing teams kind of misleading us or even lying to us about our rigs? Hey guys, Turk here. Hope you're having a good one. I've got a LAN party coming up this weekend. We're going to be playing a bunch of COD, Counter-Strike, Left 4 Dead, a whole bunch of first-person shooters with me and the boys. And with all these types of first-person shooters, it really got me thinking about that interview I did with those esports players back at DreamHack Dallas. According to G2, Furia, and Big, many professional gamers typically play on 240Hz panels and shoot for low quality settings at either 1080p or even lower resolutions. And that got me thinking, why are esports players only running Intel or Nvidia? But as I was digging deeper into my data, it even got me thinking, why are they playing on the best hardware? Well guys, words are cheap and test time is expensive, so let me show you what I got. For my testing, I'm going to be looking at different processors and GPUs from Intel, AMD, and Nvidia. For the blue team, I finally have taken my 12700K out of the box and set up my Intel test bench. And for the red team, I've got my trusty 5900X. As for the GPUs, I've got my RTX 3080 we've talked about several times here on the channel. And for AMD's side, I've got their top tier 6950 XT from their RDNA 2 lineup. Both systems are using two 8GB sticks of DDR4 4400 running at their default XMP timings. So all in all, we've got some pretty potent water cooling rigs that should be better than most of the rigs that are out on the arena. Let's start off with one of the OG esports, Counter-Strike. On the left, we have both GPUs using the Intel CPU, and on the right side, we've got the 5900X. Overall, the RTX 3080 appears to have slightly higher average frame rates than the AMD GPU, but we're only talking about 2 to 4 percentage point difference here. The big difference is the 1% lows. On this chart, I've marked in yellow the 240Hz panel threshold, which if we go below that line, we're going to be seeing less than optimal output from our setup. With the Intel CPU and Nvidia GPU, we are comfortably above our 240Hz threshold, though the 6950 XT dips 20 FPS below our target. I also see a similar trend when using the AMD CPU, with the all AMD solution drifting closer to the 120Hz threshold. This leads me to believe that AMD is on the right track, and if I had my hands on my 5800X3D part, we could likely see both processors performing very similar in this game. So does this translate into other esports titles? Fortnite is a lot more recent than CSGO, and Epic's Battle Royale definitely cranks up the graphical requirements quite a bit. When using the same hardware configs as before, it pleases me to see that the AMD hardware does manage to sneak ahead by just a few frames in both scenarios. However, all configs are strikingly close to the 240Hz threshold, and 1% lows typically fall below the 120Hz threshold. So you might be asking yourself, why are Turk's results so low? In all of my testing, I'm going to be using the in-game replay functions that are provided with the game, where they capture the network traffic going to the servers so that they can recreate in real time every single player's actions, movements, while still utilizing the in-game graphics engine. The replays in question are for the most part professional matches between the best of the best. So these examples are specific to a professional setting, so of course your mileage may vary. As we eagerly await the public release of Overwatch 2, I ran a quick match as Moira and grabbed the replay. By doing this, I can watch Hammond wreck shop around the arena and get a good sampling of all the different graphic effects from all of the different characters. As far as the setups are concerned, each config hits relatively the same FPS, well above our 240Hz threshold. But for the 5900X, our 1% lows do struggle significantly, though plenty of margin above the 120Hz threshold. How does Vulkan behave in an esports setting? Siege has got us covered here. The Intel plus Nvidia configuration gets the best results, followed closely by either GPU using the 5900X. But there does appear to be a driver issue at play with the Intel and AMD configuration, which just isn't a good spot to be in a competitive setting. And if we go back to our esports interviews, that's one of the exact same reasons why the big esports team doesn't like AMD's driver setup. Lastly, we have Rocket League. Clearly, all configurations are well above our 240Hz threshold, even for our 1% lows. But what's interesting here is just how well optimized the game is for Nvidia GPUs. Despite the relative wins for Nvidia and Intel here, all four configurations provide effectively the same result. Of course, all of these games behave a little bit different based on the hardware configuration, but for simplicity's sake, I went ahead and averaged all the results to look at their average frame rate as well as their average 1% low. With all the data averaged, the Intel plus Nvidia configuration runs 9 percentage points faster on average frame rate with a 17% faster 1% low, which is critical when frames translate into wins. The 6950 XT sees a similar drop in average frame rates, but with a more consistent 1% low from either processor. And as I said in the CSGO segment, I imagine if I still had my 5800X3D, the processor would be a much less of an issue with this comparison. Regardless of the setup, all of our combos are able to hit the 240Hz threshold that our professionals like to see and across all of the different combos. Wait a minute, now that I'm looking at the data, the CPUs, the GPUs, they all kind of perform the same. So are our marketing teams kind of misleading us or even lying to us about our rigs? Do we have to have the best hardware to play just like the pros? What if I've got an $800 mid-range PC? Will it be able to hit 240Hz just like the pros? Let's find out. With the latest crash in GPU prices, if you don't want to wait for the next generation in announcements, now is a great time to buy a GPU. I've got a broad spectrum of RDNA 2 GPUs at my disposal, so let's see how the high-end fares against the mid-range 6700 XT and 6600 XT. And would you look at that, the only game that appears to be GPU limited would be Rocket League, which is still above our Pro's 240Hz threshold. With that, our esports teams could effectively play on GPUs that only cost $340 US. That extra $460 you were planning on spending on your RTX 3080, it doesn't look like it's going to give you the professional edge that you were looking for, at least in these titles. Given that all of the games today at esports settings appear to be extremely CPU limited, what sort of performance can we expect with less expensive CPU options? I have several AMD CPUs at my disposal, so let's see how two prominent 6-core parts behave. Our popular 5600X appears to be anywhere between 1 and 5% slower than the 5900X, so saving $200 US for slightly less performance makes complete sense for an esports-centric gaming PC. In an interesting twist though, let's check out that 3600. It might not be the same professional experience, but this 3-year-old processor is plenty powerful for a 120Hz or variable refresh rate experience. Before we wrap it up here, I do want to talk about frame times for just a bit, because let's be honest, I'm being a little bit oversimplistic talking about average frame rates and 1% lows. So by looking at the actual amount of time it takes to render a frame to the screen, can we definitively see if there is a performance benefit by using an Intel processor or an AMD processor, or are we good enough using our old 3600? While recording the first 3 rounds of the CSGO replay, I recorded frame times to capture a decent sample of gameplay. The blue line is our 12700K, red is the 5900X, and the 3600 is in green, because that's going to save you some money. Now the 4 millisecond yellow line is the 240Hz threshold, while orange remains our 120Hz threshold. Clearly the 3600 is significantly slower than the newer processors, but it's clearly capable of running below the 8 millisecond threshold. Looking at the 5900X, it is strikingly close to the 12700K here. We see anywhere between half and a whole millisecond of better frame times with the Intel processor. If I do a little math and take the 5 sample running average, the chart cleans up significantly, and clearly the 5900X is just slightly slower than the 12700K. And if those charts weren't telling enough, I converted all the data into a histogram. We can confirm that the Intel part performs about 0.8 milliseconds better at its peak frame time, but both processors do have similar performance variation. The big downside for the 3600 though is its performance variation. The 3600 can hit frame rates of 357 to about 125, which is far from ideal for an esports setting. Given our results today, let's answer those 2 initial questions. I definitely think that AMD has the right hardware nowadays to finally be competitive in the professional esports scene. We've confirmed that AMD CPUs are slightly slower than Intel, but in these scenarios, they perform close enough that I bet a seasoned veteran might have a very difficult time telling the difference. AMD just needs to outbid the marketing teams from both Intel and Nvidia in order to put their names up on the big screen at the next World Championship. We've also confirmed that some mid-range budget hardware is able to perform just as good and hit the same frame rate targets that our pros are seeing at the grand finals. A 5600X or a 12600K system with a modest 6600 XT or RTX 3060 will perform excellent in this scenario. Or if you're short on cash and don't want to upgrade your processor, as long as you've got enough CPU horsepower like the Ryzen 3600, you should be able to max out a 120Hz 1080p panel with no problem. Now that we've gotten our hands dirty with some high-end systems as well as some mid-range systems, I'm going to be posting some polls over in the community tab. I'm going to ask you questions about budget ranges, CPU and GPU recommendations, and let's see if our community, the Turk Force, is able to come up with some sweet rigs and see if we can build those and test them out and see if we can challenge the status quo when it comes to PC part picker lists. So definitely let me know down in the comments what you think of this video. See if there's any other games we should check out like Call of Duty or even Apex Legends, because I'd love to see how these different setups test in those particular scenarios. But guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I appreciate y'all sticking to the end. And as always, take care, Turk Force.